Okay, what I'm going to tell you is disturbing, and it's disturbing because this entire story is absolutely disgusting. So everybody just needs to be prepared for that. Prepared for that, it's going to be okay. But these were two of perhaps the most cursed days of my lives, and they were back to back. In 2010, my uncle Will, my sister Chriselle, my cousin Megan, and I decided to take a dream vacation to Guatemala, which is great. And these people are the best people in the world to travel with, and they're also the worst people in the world to travel with. They're the best people in the world to travel with because if anybody comes up with a crazy idea, they agree to it without question or hesitation. And they're the worst people in the world to travel with because if anybody comes up with a crazy idea, they agree to it without question or hesitation. And that's how we got to a little town called Tilipita in the middle of Guatemala. And let me be clear that Guatemala is truly one of the most beautiful countries in the entire world, and the people are wonderful, and I love it and everything, blah, blah, blah. But in contrast, Tilipita Guatemala is the most vile, disgusting cesspool of misery that has ever existed. And this is coming from somebody who was at the DMV on Monday. Tilipita basically exists just for disgusting backpackers. Nobody really lives there for the most part, except for people who are catering to and luring in the very confused, disgusting backpackers who think that they're going to find paradise in Tilipita, Guatemala. But we had read and failed to read between the lines in a little guide that described Tilipita, and we thought it made it sound like it was going to be paradisical. And so we planned to venture out that way after about a week and a half of being in Guatemala. What we didn't read in the guide was that Tilipita is disgusting, and that it's a miserable place, and that yes, you save money, but then you have to use all of that money that you save to buy antibiotics for the rest of your life. To get to Tilipita from where we were deep within Guatemala, we had to take buses for an entire day. Just bus after crowded bus. And for most of the day, I was both sitting on someone and being sat on by somebody else. And finally, when the last bus spit us out, it was already dark, it was pouring rain, and they told us that in order to get to Tilipita, we were going to have to take a taxi the rest of the way. So one terrifying taxi ride later in the dark through the rain, we finally arrived in a town called Tilapa, which is next to Tilipita. Tilipita is not technically an island, but to get to it you have to take a boat from Tilapa because it's surrounded by swamp. And so we were dropped off in Tilapa. Because it was so dark and because it was so rainy outside, the boats were no longer going to Tilipita that night, so we were ushered to the town hotel, which had rooms at $1.80 a night. So we splurged and got two, because you only live once. And before we were taken to our rooms, the woman who ran the hotel, which had 4 rooms by the way, took us into her kitchen and said she was going to cook us some dinner. She walked into the kitchen, picked a dead chicken up off the floor and started plucking it, and told us to sit down. The 4 of us sat around a square table and took turns mouthing to each other, "I'm scared," as we heard the sounds of butcher knife against wood in the background. And this continued until my cousin Megan was attacked by a cat. Cats are a terrible thing. They're just a terrible thing. And this cat in particular was not possessed by the devil. I'm pretty sure it was the devil. The devil has a body, by the way. Beware, it looks like a cat lives in Guatemala. To say that this cat attacked Megan is actually a bit of an understatement because it latched on with its teeth and she shook it in the air until it finally released, screaming the entire time, "What is this?" When it finally released, she had blood dripping from her hand. And we wondered about rabies, but then we decided not to worry about it because a little rabies never hurt anybody. And at that point, the meal was ready anyway. Woman brought out the chicken to us, which was chicken chunks that were mostly cooked, which is how we like it. And the chicken chunks were topped with those little orange plastic cheeses that are covered, that are also covered in a layer of cheese. And it's that stuff that you don't know where the plastic ends and the cheese begins, because it's all the same substance. And I'm absolutely convinced that those little orange plastic cheeses that you put on your sandwich are made by the same machine that makes the chairs that you sit on in elementary school, the orange ones. And that's why you have to refrigerate the cheese, otherwise it'll turn into a chair. So for the next half hour, we slowly slipped bits of chicken and cheese into our pockets and made the chewing sounds, and until rubbing our bellies and thanking her, gracias, and then asking if we could see our rooms. So we were taken to one of the rooms, and the room was terrifying, which I was like, we paid good money for this. But the room was small, and it had 2 straw mattresses on the floor, and in the middle of the room, very close to both of the mattresses, was the most traumatized, disturbed-looking toilet I've ever seen in my entire life. I wanted to call social services on whoever was in charge of taking care of this toilet. It didn't have a toilet seat, and a swarm of cockroaches was crawling in and out of it in a wave. It was pretty. It looked like the ocean. But then we smelled and saw it. Wet, fresh poop smeared all down the side. And I don't know how it got like that, but it was there, and it was wet still. And my sister, Rochelle, who very obviously had completely lowered her expectations by this point, whispered to me, "Why would they let us in the room when the poop is still wet?" She prefers it dry. I was like, well, to go to a nicer place, they give you an option. Well, we have 2 rooms tonight. In one room, the poop is still wet. The other one, it's dry. Oh, you want the dry one? It's a little more, 14 cents. So we were in this room, and the room had this metal door, and we didn't dare to go outside. We felt like we needed to stay in there because it was raining really hard, and we also kept hearing like these bang and screams sounds from coming from outside. And also, the woman who let us into the room sort of tipped us off that Tilipita wasn't exactly Provo, Utah in terms of its safety, because there were 7 locks on the door, and she showed us how to use all 7, made us prove that we could do it, and then crossed herself 15 times before she walked out. We're like, should we be worried? And we're not sure, but we think she might have sat out in front of the door all night with the baseball bat on her lap. And we made it out alive, so I guess she's pretty good at her job. But we sat on the edge of those little mattresses. We put on all of the clothes that we had to hopefully have our clothes serve as a force field between us and whatever diseases that room held. And we sat on the edges of our bed all night long just staring at each other. And the moment the light pierced the sky in the morning, the 4 of us had our backpacks on, and we were walking down the muddy road strewn with pigs and garbage to the dock to take the boat over to Tilipita, which is where we were trying to get to in the first place. So we got across the road, went to the dock, and I don't know why any of us thought that a 5-minute boat ride across the water was going to make much of a difference, but we were sure that paradise awaited us in Tilipita. So we took the boat ride across, and we discovered that Tilipita was exactly like Tilapa, except it also had 500 million dogs with pink eye running around the I don't like dogs, and I don't like pink eye. But Tilipita had a beach, and so we went to the beach. We ran to it. We were very excited. We're like, whatever, we're going to spend the day on the beach. And the beach was covered completely in garbage, and there was a toilet at high tide, which was nice, and then a whole bunch of dead fish. And when there are a whole bunch of dead fish on the beach, it's like, don't go to that beach. But and the water was brown. I think that was related. And so, but we started swimming. And when the first wave hit me, the ocean stripped me of my bathing suit, and I never saw it again. I don't know where it ended up, but I like to think that the guy on Castaway got it somehow. Romantic. So then, of course, because I'm like the palest human being that has ever lived, I'm like slightly less pale right now, but usually I'm very pale. We all got so sunburned within the first few hours of being in Tilipita that all we wanted to do for the rest of the day was stand under this spigot that was dripping cold water, and so we just sort of like walked in a circle, just taking turns all day long. And the night finally came, and the girls decided to go into one of the rooms, and my uncle Will and I were sitting out at the table. And we had planned on being in Tilipita for 3 days. And we were kind of like all trying to be positive throughout the day, and we were doing that thing where each of us thought that everybody else wanted to stay for 3 days, and that we were the only ones that didn't want to. We didn't want to ruin that for everybody else, because clearly everybody was having a pretty good time. And so Will and I were sitting there, and we started having a conversation where we were like slowly like testing the how much the other person really wanted to be there, and then we're like each giving an inch until eventually we discovered that like both of us absolutely hated it and wanted to get out of it first thing in the morning. And so and that's basically how the conversation went, and ultimately it was like this. Like, oh, maybe, well, we could just stay for 2 days, like, or, you know, we could stay for 1 day. What if we leave tomorrow? Okay, so tomorrow afternoon, or just in the morning, we could sleep in. We could get up early for it. Maybe we should go see if the boat's ready now. And then we said, okay, well, let's go check with the girls and see what they think. Let's feel it out. And we got there, we got in like 6 words before they cut us off. We were like, hey, we were thinking about leaving. Okay, we'll pack our bags now! Well, the boat didn't leave until the morning, so we had to stay there all night anyway, and we were in so much pain because of the sunburns that we had accrued throughout the day. And this was the most miserable, awful, horrible night of my entire life. And I sat up on that mattress just in so much pain. No aloe, like nothing to soothe the pain. And I would have given anything to just be life-flighted out of Tilipita. And absolutely anything. And I think I was like praying all night, and I was raised a Mormon, and so I was like doing all these Mormon prayers, but then eventually I just branched out and started praying to everything. I even prayed to like David Hasselhoff just in case. And then the morning came, and we grabbed our bags, and we couldn't hold them on our backs because our backs were so sunburned, and I was like basically naked for the whole day because of the ocean thing. And so we're walking across Tilipita, and if Tilipita was not hell, we were positive that hell was about 3 inches below Tilipita because the sand was so hot. And we were like bouncing across, like, get us out of here, get us off this island. And we finally get to the dock, and the boatman says, the boat's not going today. We're like, why isn't the boat going today? And he said, because there are crocodiles in the water. And I still don't know if crocodiles live down there, but that's what he said. And we're like, no. Then you like strap the boat to one of those crocodiles and have it take us across. And we like begged and we bartered and we offered all kinds of things, our virtue and so forth. And, not really. I didn't. I have standards. Modest is hottest. And so he finally, I think he took pity on us. He was like, all right, get in the boat. So he took us across, and we were like, we're freed, we're freed. And then we're like, no, wait, we're in Tilapia now. And then we remembered that we had to spend an entire day taking buses where we would be both sitting on people and being sat on by other people for the entire day. And that's when the trip went from kind of bad to absolutely horrible. I had been drinking a lot of water because I have like this history of passing out because I get dehydrated, and I didn't want this to happen in Guatemala because I wanted to remember it all. And and so I was drinking all this water, and my cousin Megan was not drinking any water at all because on the way out to Tilipita, she had so much water that she had to pee so much on the bus that she was actually crying. She was in so much pain because she had to pee, and so she was like, I'm not drinking any water until we're done with the buses, right? So I was drinking all this water. She's not drinking anything. And we get on, we end up getting on this bus that's like this 8-hour bus ride through the mountains. And it's very crowded, it's very full of people, and everybody's kind of like switching around seats, like musical chairs in that bus, and I'm not really sure why. And every time you got up to stretch your legs, somebody would sit in your seat, and then you go look around and sit on somebody's lap for a while, and somebody sits on your lap, and somebody sits on their lap, and you're stacked on top of each other. It's the most miserable hot bus ride that you've ever experienced. And suddenly, like a few hours into this, I'm like, I kind of have to pee. And I don't think the bus has stopped for a few hours. Does this bus not stop? Surely it stops. Other people have to pee. And so I thought, okay, well, it's going to stop at some point. I'm certain of this. And so we go on for like another hour or two, and the bus isn't stopping. And I'm starting to get really worried because I'm like basically crying because I'm in a lot of pain. And we couldn't even like lean back against the seats because our backs were so sunburned. So I'm sitting on the edge of the seat with like all these people around me. I have to pee so much, and it's really hot. And I asked my uncle, who speaks really great Spanish, I said, will you please go up to the bus driver and just beg him to pull over? I don't need a bathroom, I need to pee. I just need to get off the bus and pee. I'll pee anywhere. And my uncle's like, okay, let me go ask him. So he goes up there and he's like, and, I didn't speak Spanish, but that's what it sounded like. And then my uncle comes back, he's like, no, he said no. He said, so the bus stops when it stops. I was like, well, when is it going to stop? And he's like, I don't know, maybe in a few hours. I was like, we don't have a few hours. But I don't know what would happen, because I don't even think I could pee my pants on that bus, because you're holding it for so long, you can't after a while. Anyway. I don't know why I shared all that with you. I wasn't planning on it. So then I was sitting there, and I was sitting on the edge of my seat, and my legs were like under the seat, and all of a sudden I feel the back of my right leg, my calf, getting wet, trickle wet. And I'm like, what is going on? I know I'm not peeing my pants because I can't. And I turned around and I looked, and one of the men sitting in the seat behind me was peeing onto my leg.